I'm Belinda Goodrich.
And I'm Brandie Beane. Welcome to
See How I Did That? This is your opportunity to get engaged and inspired by our guests who have overcome obstacles to achieve success.
Real women,
Real talk,
and real inspiration. Your transformation starts now. Welcome to See How I Did That. I am Brandie Beane.
And I'm Belinda Goodrich.
And on this week's episode, we get to go deep down into relationships, which I think is fitting because it's Valentine's
Day week.
And our guest of honor is the one and only Monique Helstrom.
Yeah, Monique is just one of those ladies. When I met her, I'm like, I want to get to know her. She is a fireball. She gets shit done, which I totally appreciate. Yes. And she just has a very almost contagious energy, I would say, about
Absolutely.
her. Don't you think?
I would definitely agree with that. And it was very interesting throughout our interview that we talked about relationships, but from a perspective that I guess you could call non-traditional, where women who are now, I would say in, the late 30s, early 40s, maybe even in their 50s, that decided to focus on their career versus creating a family, getting married young, like the traditional way. So it was very eye-opening to me. What about for you?
Yeah, Monique spent years as Simon Sinek's chief. So she's really had some really great exposure with her career, and she chose to focus on that. And it was interesting to hear her tell the stories of how people would assume she was his wife or his girlfriend. And, is there nothing else I could possibly be to this man other than that? And so she did. She talked a lot about her research that she's done. And, for us, I thought it was an interesting dynamic because you're 30, she's in her 40s, I'm 50. And we were talking about basically high power women in the dating realm right now. And as a single woman, relatively
newly single.
We're all single. Yeah. So, and we're all three of us have this very similar personalities, which is, she was actually told to tone herself down, and don't really speak much about your career and just the idea of what men are attracted to versus what women are attracted to.
Absolutely. Well, let's not give too much away.
Yes.
I think let's go ahead and get to this week's episode with Monique Helstrom.
And we're going to title this one, Where Have All the Good Men Gone?
That's a great Welcome to See How I Did That. This is Brandie, and we are here with Monique Helstrom. Monique, we are so happy to have you on our show today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. These gorgeous ladies that I'm looking at.
And we would love to know just a little bit more about you.
Sure. Monique Helstrom. I am currently owner of Onpoint, and I do speaking and training for executives and executive assistants, helping them build a powerful partnership. I've always really been in a logistically oriented job. I was an event planner. I worked with Simon Sinek for the last decade as his producer and executive assistant. And, throughout all of this success and wonderful times, I have been slightly unsuccessful in love, which is why we're here today.
Awesome. We are. And so there's so many dimensions to you, Monique, that are going to be fun to explore here. So, and our listeners are definitely in for a treat because you have such a refreshing perspective on life, and you're so authentic. That's what I love about you. You're just gonna tell us how it is. So, before we get into the dating stuff, briefly, let's talk about your relationship with Simon Sinek and kind of how did that come to be, and how did that impact you as far as being career driven now away from him?
Away from him. I've sort of always been career driven. My parents were very career driven. I come from a military family. My dad was Army. So we were very ingrained from a very early age that you get out what you put in, both in work and in life. So I thank my parents genuinely from the bottom of my heart. They really did instill that into me as a young child, not to a damaging perspective where that was the only way that I was going to get attention and love, but I definitely have always been very career focused and very ambitious, which is how I sort of even met with Simon. I had been an event planner. I had been in sales. I had been doing a lot of things, worked my way up the career ladder, and decided I didn't really want to do that anymore. I started my own company. I lived in Los Angeles and was fighting the good fight as a small business, a very young, female-oriented small business, and was doing some event planning. And that's how I met Simon. I was doing some freelance event planning, and he was very early stages, and he was speaking at an event that I was planning. This is 2007. So this is pre-TED Talk, pre-book, pre-everything. And I really believed in him, and I believed in the message that he was giving. And so we became friends, and I sort of watched his journey and watched the book happen and all sorts of the beginning stages. And I moved back to Philadelphia in 2011, and he and I connected on a project. And as we started working on it, we really understood that our skill sets were complementary. I was very lucky in that he saw that as a positive thing, whereas a lot of companies say you're so different than I am, that might be an odd thing, or I might not be able to get along with you. He saw our differences as a bonus, as a value add, really, to who he was and what he was trying to build. So started working together early then, and just left early this year. And it really has been the best education. I worked with the best of the best and learned a lot about leadership, not only from the things that he said, but the things that he did. So I find myself very lucky to have had that experience.
Awesome. I think being a female in any business, whether it's corporate or it's your own business, can pose some challenges. Unfortunately, I would like to say there's not, but there are. Can you just shed some light on how you handled that and overcame those challenges as being a female?
Sure. Well, specifically, Simon and I used to joke. I used to get the comment all the time when I would travel with him, "Oh, you must be his girlfriend. You must be his wife." And it literally in those words, "You must be.
You must be.
You must be." And so, there were many things that I wanted to say in response to that. But what I usually would say was, "Must I be? Like, is there any other capacity at which I would be standing next to Simon Sinek right now?"
Yeah.
And then I just started to get goofy with it. And I say, I run his life, but I'm not his wife. So
like that
how
one.
I usually combat that was just by humor and shutting it down right away. And just saying the thing that I needed to say, not adding any condescension or manipulation to the words, just saying what I needed to say. I run his life, but I'm not his wife. Thank you very much. And we move on. I didn't want to make it a thing. I don't want to bring it to light. And I certainly didn't want to have an argument with somebody else about what the value of having a woman in a high level seat position was.
Right.
But I honestly have gotten this my whole life. Being very young and being an event planner, people would deal with me as the event planner. And then when they saw me and they saw that I was a female and all that, the dynamic would change immediately. And I could see it in their eyes and I could see it in their faces. So as most women do, I think one of the defense mechanisms I created was to puff up, be strong, put that guard up, and there's something that we do where we masculinize ourselves and make it so that we can put those feathers up and really hold ourselves strongly. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. So
yeah. So that's actually a really good lead in then, because as a strong woman who has had to puff yourself up and who has kind of been challenged on that, how has that impacted you from a romance perspective?
Oh my goodness. Well,
let's start. Let's dish. Let's talk about this.
Well, anecdotally, I had known this for so long, and I've been doing a lot of research on this. I swear there's a book in my head somewhere about the trials and tribulations of dating, and I've certainly had some really great bad first dates, which will be the second podcast that we do, because those are good ones. But I have noticed a number of things, and it's been proven by a lot of the studies that I've looked into as well, that unfortunately, men prefer less dominant and less intelligent women. It's biological. There's little that we can do about it. Women prefer more dominant men, and men prefer less dominant and less intelligent women. And that's a problem. And I have definitely found that in my experience, because, above a certain line, men are turned off by a level of intelligence, especially if it's greater than their own. That's really a stretch for most men. And we live in a world right now where women are more educated than men. Like women have been out educating men for years and decades, not only in the United States, but everywhere. Women are 37% more educated than men. We have 37% more college degrees. So that's a hard stat to get over. And I've definitely found that the higher I go in my success in my career, the smaller of a dating pool that I actually have.
Yeah.
Because men don't necessarily want the really smart, really successful, really ambitious woman. I'm just calling it like it is.
Right. And how has social media, do you think, impacted that? I mean, you're pretty present. I mean, I Google you as we're preparing for, I mean, I already knew you and was so blessed to know you and work with you in professional capacity. As we're preparing for the podcast, it's like, okay, let's put it in the Google, right? Monique Helstrom, and boom, there you are. And I get this as a speaker, we're in the public eye. How do you think that impacts your dating or potential dates?
Well, again, it's, you know, it's that intimidating word, you know, when we feel confident in who we are, we put ourselves out with this confidence. And unfortunately, sometimes it can be seen on the other end as a negative. You know, it's just not something that is attractive to most men. And I found that men fall into two camps. Either A, they love it and they support it and they're great with it. They don't necessarily want to date me, but they're like, yeah, rah, rah, rah. This is awesome. Go get him, girl. You're not for me, but some other lucky guy is going to be able to get you. Or it's just, you know, it's just a complete, I don't want to deal with you anymore. You know, it's too much. And that is something that I've definitely been told my whole life. You're just too much. Can you dumb it down a little bit? Can you bring it down a notch? Like I've literally had men say this to me, like, your personality is too much. Your success is too much. Maybe you should wait until your second or third date to talk about how successful you are. What? So, you know, it's unfortunate because now that we're out there and we're in the social, it's that you can't hide that. Like,
right.
Even if I did want to do something dumb, like not talk about my success until the third date, I can't. It's already out there. Everyone knows.
So. Right. I think that obviously I'm single, and I have found in my past relationships that there's almost an intimidation factor where I felt bad talking about being successful because I knew that my partner was not, and that they would be intimidated by me, which then also impacts, you know, romance, things like that. And I don't necessarily know, maybe you have some tips on maybe what we can do in the future to encourage women. Like, you don't have to, I think, let me back up here. So when we're younger, it's like find a man, raise a family. That's a model.
The life passage. Yeah.
Yes.
The expected life passages.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right. But some of us, like us three, was let's get our careers, be successful, and then when we are maturely ready, then it's time to get in a relationship. But by then, all the good men are good men.
Where have all the good men gone?
Good men are where have all the good men gone? They pick the girls that chose that first life path. So how do we change as a society? How do we flip this over to say, hey, this is now socially acceptable to be a successful woman, and men jump on board?
Sure.
I don't think it's going to happen, but maybe.
You know, I'm until two things happen, I'm just not sure that the current construct is going to work until our biology completely changes, which Mother Nature has kept these in our systems for hundreds of thousands of years. So I don't think it's going anywhere, or we just have to change our opinions and people have to just change the things that they think about. The biology is obviously much harder than that. But you're totally right. You know, as I mentioned, the higher we go in our success, the lower our dating pool is. And for men, it's completely the opposite. The higher status they go, the higher pool they have, because they are not only attractive to the successful women, but in the fact that they usually prefer less dominant, less intelligent women, they have a larger pool. And so, you know, and a lot of the studies that I've been looking into show this, and it's pretty incredible. There's actually a name for it. It's called hypergamy, and it's where females tend to seek a higher class income and status, and hypogamy is men who seek a higher status physically. Women seek a higher status socially. Men seek a higher status physically. Men want to have babies with the prettier people so that their seed can move on. So, and it's difficult. It's a difficult life to be in, and there's not much that we can do about it at this point besides move forward, own our strengths, be confident and comfortable with that. But I do think one of the things that we need to do is stop feeling bad for it, because when we put that label on it, when we coat our success with feeling guilty about it, that actually does come through. Yes. And I think there's a part of that's also unattractive, to be perfectly honest. So I definitely think we could do that.
We will get back to our interview shortly after this word from our sponsor, Goodrich Publishing. At Goodrich Publishing, we believe everyone has a story that needs to be told. Have you considered writing your book? We're here to help you get that book in your hands in the most economic way possible. Find us on the web at goodrichpublishing.com. And now, back to our interview.
Women tend to have unrealistic perspectives. It's from all these stupid movies that we've been watching our whole life. Damn you, Little Mermaid. Damn you, Little Mermaid. Why do you always make me think that she didn't even have to speak and he fell in love with her? And you watch these movies and you're like, wait a second. So I think we need to be realistic about what we're also looking for, especially in our position where we are successful. We hold ourselves to such high standards that I know for myself, I tend to place those high standards on other people as well. And that's something I need to work on generally. And it's definitely something I need to work with in my male relationships, in that nobody's perfect. I can't expect everything out of someone. I can't expect them to know everything and be able to communicate with me in the same manner that I want to communicate with them. It's about values. And once you can have that basis, I think moving from there.
Yeah. I think you made a good point, and I want to share a quick story. So this morning I was driving my daughter to daycare, and anytime that she watches my phone, she watches YouTube, and I have it set to the kids. But when we're in the car, I play it over my Bluetooth so I can hear what she's listening to. And this morning it was a British show, and it was about Rapunzel, and it talked about the knight, was walking his horse past the castle, and he heard a beautiful singing voice, and he looks up and he sees this beautiful girl, and he stopped and waited for the witch to see how the witch got up there, and he got up to the castle, and he's like, "You're the most beautiful girl I have ever seen. Marry me and come back to my castle." And it's like, we are teaching our young daughters this. And I was like, oh my God. I said, Cadence, you need to turn this off. Like, I'm very uncomfortable listening to this. And it wasn't anything wrong. Obviously, it's a fairy tale, but still, like, we're setting those expectations from, she's 3 now. That's what she thinks is going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I think us as parents, or, aunts or grandmas, whatever, we need to start and say, hey, let's start setting expectations correctly. Not saying that fairy tales can't happen. Maybe they can. Right. I don't know. But you just it sparked my memory of this morning. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. It's crazy.
I think teaching our children that beauty starts in the heart. Yes. And goes outwards from there, that the physical beauty on the outside is complemented by the inside beauty, not the driver of the inside beauty. And I hear it all the time. I hear my parents call my niece beautiful, constantly beautiful. You're so beautiful. You're so gorgeous. You're so gorgeous. And I'm always going, and you're smart and you're motivated. And I'm keep trying to put those things into her. But it's just what we call young ladies. You're so beautiful. You're so cute. And what do we tell our young boys? You're so strong. Look at those muscles. Look how strong you are. We have to stop teaching our children what to do. It's inherent in who we are. And I think if anything, we can start this now and at least help the future generations.
Exactly. Yeah, because I mean, there is a biological component. I mean, we are still a species that has a brainstem that is programmed for us to survive through homeostasis and by finding the right mate that complements our bone structure. I mean, we are biologically driven to procreate and to look for the right partner. And that's what you see coming through when we see these tendencies. So it is going to take something very strong behaviorally, expectation wise, emotionally, to not necessarily overpower that, but to put that into a better perspective, because there is going to be that biological drive.
And that's where consciousness comes in. I think biology definitely can point us in a direction just from our natural chemicals. But when you consciously are aware of a situation, that's when you can say, and something really stupid biologically, we want to eat. I want to eat. So I can put anything in my mouth that I want because I need to eat. But consciously, I know I want to give myself something healthy. So if you think about it in that manner, yes, the biology might drive our behavior where men do, look for beauty over status and power, and women actually do look for status and power and resources over beauty. We can actually consciously at least put a filter on top of that and know, or at least understand the awareness of why we're being driven to that part, and just add our own take to it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I find, so I just turned 50 and I have an amazing network of friends, my tribe. I love them. And it's only growing. That's what's amazing, is that I spent years being the reclusive, heads down. I worked, I had my kids, that was it, and I didn't have the social connections and the relationships, especially with women. It just like, now they don't understand me. I had my first daughter really young. So I was always at an odd stage compared to women my age, because my kids were happening when they were out partying. My kids were older when they were having kids, so there was always this little bit of a mismatch. Well, now that I'm 50, it's like I have found all of these amazing, strong women. And I think what's happening is, for many women in my tribe, they're looking around going, you know what? I'm pretty awesome on my own. I don't need a man in my life. I don't need a man. Whereas we were raised, a lot of us, when we were younger, you did need a man. Like that was a thing. You had to have a man and granted 2 incomes are nice. But that feeling or that obligation of, well, you're not a whole person if you don't have a man. And that seems to be dissipating, especially when you get to the beauty of being my age. It's like, okay, number one, I'm out of the market for kids. So it's not like I have a biological drive to have any children. So score one. Many of us, like you started the conversation with, are educated. So they're running their businesses. They have the education. They are strong. And what I find at our age is that we're not willing to sacrifice anymore. I'm not going to dumb myself down. I'm not going to wait till the third date. And I'm not going to be submissive to you. And so there's something very, refreshing about that I see more women doing that, and they're stepping away from very harmful relationships. And they're really finding their strength. So it's exciting for me. I know it's still a struggle for the younger generation, but for I think in my generation, we're really starting to kind of step in and own it, and actually love the fact we don't have a man in our life. There's 2 things in what you just said that I absolutely love. I found the same thing with other women, that I'm building this tribe of women that are like me finally. And I think there's something that happens in our 30s where we shift from, I definitely felt when I was younger, a lot of women didn't like me. Because I was strong, because I was confident, because I was successful. The women that maybe didn't have that, or for whatever reason, I was the enemy. I was persona non grata. I hardly had many female relationships for my whole life. I always got along with men better than I did with women. I just couldn't deal with the whiny, blah, blah, blah. I also was never the one who only dreamed of getting married and having babies. So I didn't have a whole lot to talk about with that population. There's nothing wrong with it. So don't send me hate mail. There's nothing wrong with it. It just wasn't my specific story. But now there's something that happens, I don't know, somewhere between 35 and I'm 41 now,
where that just drops. And now successful women, we want to be together. We want to hold each other up and build each other up. And the days of being jealous of that are long gone. So I think that helps with our confidence. So that brings our confidence up to say, well, I've got my ladies and they're all confident and we're all the same. So maybe this isn't something that I'm doing that's wrong. Yeah. Maybe I can stand tall in my shoes and really just say, look, this is who I am. I am successful. I am smart. I'm sorry if you don't like it, but I'm not going to dumb myself down. I'm past that point. Maybe when I was 22, I would have, but not anymore. You get what you see.
Right. And I think that's so important. And I'm 30. And I do find that I'm meeting more and more women that have that mentality that are my age of, hey, you know what? Like if you don't want to come along with me on this journey, then see you later. Like, I'm fine. I'm going to do it. Yeah. And I will say, and I normally bag on social media, but I will say that I do believe social media actually helps in that aspect because I'm a part of a bunch of women's groups on Facebook that actually promote that tribe-like friendship and saying, hey, I got your back. We're female. Like, I'm not going to tear you down because you are a woman. Like, I'm going to build you up because you're a woman. Right. And I think that Facebook essentially has really helped that. Which put that on record that I just gave Facebook a compliment. Yeah. I normally
tearing it down.
Hey, some things it works for you.
Yes.
One or two. It's actually
and I think social media doesn't put ages on things. So we have in those groups people from early 20s up until 60s, 70s. So, but you can't necessarily tell the age differences.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's actually a good point too. When we talk about, there's so much nowadays about like the generational differences and, the millennials and the thises and the that's. And I'm finding in my tribe, I mentioned that a lot of them happen to be around my age, but there's not a hard boundary. And I'm actually finding that I am, and that was one of the reasons we actually wanted to do this podcast as mother and daughter, is because I like her perspective. I like to understand. I'm intrigued. I'm excited about it. And hopefully that goes both ways. So I think having the conversations we can, society keeps telling us, we don't like each other because we're in different generations. And it's like, that's bullshit. Yeah, bullshit. Let's learn from each other, and let's have conversations and support each other. So,
well, look at where we are. I mean, 30, 40, 50, and we're having the same conversation and we're experiencing the same type of thing. So this is obviously something that we do need to band together and we need to help each other. And, any social change starts with people just at least recognizing what's going on, talking about what's going on. And I think, Brandie, you had asked, well, what's the solution? I think one of the solutions, my soapbox is communication. And I think the more we can communicate, not only with our friends, but with the men in our lives and explain to them of all ages, who we are, what our desires are. I think there's this perception that because we're successful and we tend to have these masculine type of qualities of ambition and forward thinking and sort of strategy and all those masculine tendencies, that we are masculine in our feelings and emotions as well. We obviously have higher EQ than men do, just as a biologically we have more EQ. So talking about, yes, I may be the badass at my job, but I'm still a woman and I still love to be loved and I still want to be cared for and I still want to be held and all of those things. And I think as women, we still need to communicate that out and stop putting that filter up. Stop saying, don't hold the door open for me, or I can do this myself. Oh yeah. Stop it with that, everyone. Like men and women should open the door for people. Like let's be socially helpful to one another. Like that's just because a man wants to hold the door open for you does not reduce my IQ. And frankly, ladies, if you think this dumbs you down, that's an internal problem with you. That has nothing to do with the dude holding the door open for you. Now, if you spanked your butt on the way in, that's a totally different situation.
Yeah, exactly. That's a different discussion.
Chivalry is chivalry. And frankly, yes, I'm a badass and I'm a baller at work, but I like a guy to hold the door open for me. I do want you to get up and get my beer. I had a guy order for me the other day and I was like, at first, I even found myself going, I was like, do I want to be mad at that? And I sort of had this thing in my head, like, do I want to get angry at that? And I was like, actually, no. Who cares? like, just let the men do the thing that biologically they want to be the caregivers. Biologically, this is in their bones. They like to be the caregivers and the higher, status. So let them be. That doesn't mean that you have to be a silent, demure, non-talking, passive woman, but and that's again the distinction that I think women think that if a guy fills that hole, then they have to fill this hole. Well, there's more than two holes, ladies. Like, just because he's filling the chivalrous hole doesn't mean that you can't fill the chivalrous hole too, and be all the woman that you want to be as well.
No, agreed.
We want to thank you for joining us for this episode of See How I Did That? And we want to thank our sponsor, Goodrich Publishing. For more on our sponsor, Goodrich Publishing, you can find them at goodrichpublishing.com. Thank you, and we'll see you next week for our next episode of See How I Did That?